the Bible say, took his heart astray.
The wives Solomon took to enhance ties with foreign kingdoms turned him to their idols and eventually corrupted his own relationship with God. And the story of Solomon's downfall is an interesting window into the religious practices of the early Israelites.
People worshipped many gods. You could pick them up, you could see them, you could pray to them and expect that they would have effect.
This wasn't the Judaism that we know today. Archaeologists have found evidence that the Israelites worshipped idols before David and until the time of Jesus.
There are those who say, I suspect somewhat metaphorically, that we still worship false idols, whether it's, money or fame or a big house or the right fashion, just the right pair of shoes. All of these could also be false idols.
So it seems that despite Solomon's best efforts, he too was a disappointment. And before he died, as a punishment, God told him the kingdom he loved would be no more. Even today, the truth behind so many biblical stories that took place here in Jerusalem is still captivatingly elusive. That's in part because so many answers may be buried underneath what today is a living, breathing city. It's notoriously difficult to dig under the old city of Jerusalem.
It's very difficult because it's very sensitive. We are talking about holy places of the three main monotheistic religions.
It's so politically charged.
It's so politically charged.
Anat Cohen is a biblical scholar and a tour guide. She took us to one of the only places where archaeologists, pilgrims and tourists can explore beneath this storied city. Discovered by accident in the 19th century when an archaeologist was walking his dog, this massive network of caves and tunnels is known as Solomon's Quarries.
Anat, is this a natural cave?
No, not at all.
The quarry once provided building materials for some of the greatest construction projects in the city.
So what is this great big gaping hole here?
Actually, what you see here is the shape of a cut of a big stone that they usually used it in the second temple. We can see today in the Western Wall.
The secretive Freemasons even believe the stones mined here were used to build something much older.
They see King Solomon, the first builder. So actually, King Solomon is the
founding father.
The founding father,
of
yes,
the Freemasons.
of the Freemasons. The Freemasons believe that they even took from these quarry stones to Solomon's temple.
And that temple, of course, was the last known resting place for the mysterious Ark of the Covenant.
The 10th century BC is the last time anybody actually really sees it according to the biblical tradition. Now there are other stories, and these all are related to the Babylonian destruction of the city in 586 BC, that maybe somebody spirited the ark out of the city just ahead of the destruction.
Many believe these underground tunnels were used to secretly transport the ark out of Jerusalem when the city was under siege, and when the Babylonian invaders took detailed inventory of the treasures they plundered, something was missing.
When the Babylonians took all the treasures from Jerusalem, it was not in the list anymore.
The Ark?
Yes, the Ark was not in the list.
There are all kinds of possibilities as to where it ended up.
So we went in search of it. One famous story suggests the Ark was taken from Jerusalem to Egypt hundreds of years before the Babylonian siege began.
That's where Indiana Jones goes and looks for it. We're told that Shishak of the Bible, an Egyptian pharaoh, that he may have attacked Jerusalem just after the time of Solomon.
Yes, around about 980 BC.
And there is one theory that he took away the Ark of the Covenant. This is where we get the Indiana Jones theory.
He may have taken the Ark back to the city of Tanis.
Archaeologists find the evidence of that underwhelming and believe the Ark is no more likely to be buried in the sands of Tanis than locked away in a government warehouse.
Bureaucratic
What'd they say?
We don't know what they've got there.
Strangely enough, Our search for the Ark also brought us back to Jerusalem, to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the place Christians believe Jesus was crucified.
Hello, very nice to see you in this beautiful, beautiful spot.
We met an Ethiopian Orthodox priest named Abba Samuel, who surprisingly told us that he knows exactly where the Ark is. His evidence goes back to that affair between King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba.
Queen of Sheba's son with King Solomon took the Ark of the Covenant, Moses' commandments.
Yes.
And so where do you think they are?
City of Axum.
Axum in your country, in Ethiopia?
Yes.
Do you think it's there, really?
Yes.
He's positive it's inside this chapel in the heart of Axum in Ethiopia, although he's never seen it and no one's allowed inside except for one monk known as the Guardian, who's entrusted with the lifelong duty of safeguarding the Ark. Scholars do believe there is an Ark inside, but that is only a replica from the Middle Ages. And down in the caves below Jerusalem, we consider another possibility. The Ark never left, but was instead hidden away in this underground labyrinth.
So you think it remained in Jerusalem?
Yes, now we know from the Bible another thing. One of the kings put it somewhere in the tunnels.
A tunnel like this?
Nobody knows.
Is there
But
any evidence of this?
No
Ark?
evidence, no evidence at all. Only many stories around.
If only these walls could speak. They do, however, appear almost to weep, and their tears are said to tell a powerful story about the destruction of Jerusalem.
The name of this corner is Zedekiah's Tears.
The tears of the king.
Yeah, the tears of the king. Zedekiah was the last king of Judea.
Tears for the destruction of the temple.
Yes, the tragedy of the nation. This was the end of the first temple period.
Do we think that these tears, this mineral spring, has been running since then?
Well, I think it's running since many, many years. For sure, it's more than 2,000 years old.
And it's really interesting because, look, there are people here, there are people all over the place. It's still a living, breathing place.
Which allows the people who visit to connect with their spiritual heritage.
It's important for us to touch the history of these places and to feel this energy. It makes us cleaner.
Pure?
Pure.
Pure.
In our souls.
In your soul?
In our soul, в наших душах.
Right here?
Yeah.
A profound revelation for these Christian pilgrims, and one often shared by Muslims, Jews, and even those who come to visit for reasons other than faith.
Believers and non-believers come here. What do you think about them? Do you think they...
Well, if somebody feels the energy of the place, he doesn't have to be a believer in a certain kind of tradition or certain kind of belief. But the minute he touched the stone and felt the energy, I think that in the end of the day, yes, he has something. He took something from this Holy Spirit back with him.
A little belief.
A little belief, yes. I don't know how long it will last, but I think a little bit, yes.
Are people trying to be detectives? Are they trying to uncover something?
Well, some people prefer to leave it as it is. And some people I know that still look and wants to find the Ark of the Covenant. I don't know if somebody will find it, and I don't know what's remained after more than 2,500 years.
What was once a container for Moses and a weapon for Joshua, and even an earthly home for God in Solomon's time, is now something much more than that. The idea of the Ark and the search for it excites and inspires so many to explore the mysteries of our past and the meaning of the stories that live on today. With the death of Solomon, the Bible says the kingdom of Israel began to unravel. It ushered in a period of nearly constant war for the Israelites, and it was during this time that voices arose in the land, starting to talk about the end times, what today is called Armageddon.
And now I'm about to enter Armageddon.
Believe it or not, the name refers to an actual place about a 3-hour drive north of Jerusalem.
You know, it's amazing to be here because according to the Bible, we're now living in the last days.
Armageddon is the Greek name for this ancient city. In Hebrew it's called Megiddo. Many Christians believe this vast plateau will be the staging ground where the armies of the righteous and the wicked gather for the final showdown.
Soon, the world as we know it will come to an end, and that we'll live in a paradise earth where we won't have to die or get sick.
But while some focus on what they believe might happen here at Megiddo, the site itself gives us a nearly unprecedented glimpse back to some of the major battles of biblical times and helps us understand where those modern ideas of Armageddon came from.
So for me, Megiddo is a key for understanding the history of this country.
Our guide here is Israel Finkelstein, a renowned Israeli archaeologist who's directed the excavations at Megiddo for 20 years.
So perched on top here, you can see from all sides that it's such a strategic vantage point.
It controls the most important highway of antiquity in the ancient Near East between Egypt and Mesopotamia.
This stunning hilltop in northern Israel was once a city larger than ancient Jerusalem and hotly contested. These young, eager students laboring in the summer heat unearth history every day. This is a burial site from nearly 4,000 years ago.
So is that one skeleton?
There are actually multiple skeletons here.
And these massive jugs, that's so remarkably intact, isn't it?
Yeah. This is the last meal, or the meal for eternity, for the dead person.
Megiddo was fought over by all of the great empires of the region, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and the Egyptians.
It's very deep here.
Yes, and also the amazing accumulation of layers.
And each victor would build on top of their vanquished foe, providing Finkelstein and his crew with an abundance of evidence from 1200 to 700 BC.
So we got about, what, 500 years
500 years.
Us?
The turbulent period of King David and King Solomon, as well as their heirs.
In these 500 years, there were 4 major destruction layers at Megiddo because of big wars.
The wars brought turmoil.
Rioting broke out.
Think of America in the 1960s, and at times like these, amid the unrest and confusion, there are always a few distinctive voices that capture the mood of the moment.
They were forced back.
The people who played that role in ancient Israel are known to us now as the biblical prophets.
The prophet is the one who calls us to do what is right at a time that it's so easy to do what is wrong.
And the Hebrew prophets cry aloud against their own people, against their own rulers, against their own aristocracy, for their unjust dealings with the people.
But they also offered hope. The prophet Isaiah comforts the king of Judah, predicting the birth of a child called Emmanuel, which literally means God is with us.
And what he says is, when that kid is still young enough to be eating baby food, the enemies you're worried about will be gone. They'll be conquered.
A couple of centuries later, the Gospel of Matthew picks up that prophecy in Isaiah.
But it's unlikely that Isaiah intended his prophecies to hold such meaning even centuries later, much less in our own day.
People didn't write down and pass on the stories of their families and their people in order for a bunch of Americans a couple thousand years later to learn about their own worlds.
But prophets also spoke of a day when the Lord would make a new covenant. The temple would be rebuilt, and the land would be ruled by a righteous leader, a figure who came to be referred to as the Messiah, God's anointed one.
This is a cemetery outside the walls of the old city of Jerusalem. In fact, this is a valley filled with cemeteries, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim, all lying side by side in death, because they all believe that the words of the prophets will be fulfilled, that the Messiah will come to this very valley, and they all want to be first in line when he raises the righteous from the dead.
The valley, called the Kidron, is the final scene of that final fiery battle between good and evil, accompanied by a mass resurrection of souls who'll be gathered into God's army. And half a world away in Kansas City, Missouri, we went to meet some American Christians who are ready to enlist now.
So our search has brought us to a strip mall in the Bible Belt, to a building that's called IHOP, which frankly most Americans would associate with pancakes. But they're not focused on breakfast at this IHOP. This is the International House of Prayer. Where are we right now as far as you're concerned? Have the end times, end days started?
Yes, I think we're in the early stages of that story coming to a crescendo.
Jesus is coming back to the earth, and he is coming back to the earth to establish his kingdom on the earth.
For the last 13 years, 24 hours a day, there's been a non-stop prayer service here. Mike Bickle, the founder of IHOP, told us it's modeled on a round-the-clock musical worship service from the biblical story of King David. So you're literally taking something from the Bible and enacting it here today, from the Old Testament. Sounds a little bit odd.
It is odd.
It is.
I tell people when they ask me what do I do, I go, it's really strange, but it's really exciting.
Bickle's ministry now boasts over 2,000 members and counting.
When I was about 13, I actually found IHOP on the internet, and I met him, and we've been dated and got married in July, and we just love being here together.
In fact, prayer gatherings like IHOP have been popping up all over the United States and across the world.